This lesson is on identifying conic sections, and so by now we have already worked with equations of parabolas, hyperbolas, circles, and ellipses, and looked at their graphs and how we get them. Now we need to be able to tell the difference between each one when we're looking at them and they're not in the form that's nice to graph in. So the form that where you have to complete the square, you want to know what you're working with beforehand. And sometimes they don't tell you. So how you can identify them. A parabola, the equation is only going to have an x squared or a y squared, but not both. So if it only has one of those squared, it's a parabola. In a hyperbola, you're going to have one or both of them squared. X squared and y squared will be both there. One will be positive and one will be negative. And so it could be the x squared minus the y squared or the y squared minus the x squared, but you're looking for different signs. With a circle and an ellipse are more closely related, and with a circle they're going to be added, and you'll have the same number in front of your x and your y. Now you can have the same number in front of your x squared and your y squared and it be a hyperbola if the signs are different. So pay attention to that first. If it is added and the numbers in front of the x squared and the y squared are different, then it's going to be an ellipse. Now also watch out for if you had like negative 5 x squared minus 5 y squared. Technically those have that same number in front, and if I factored out the negative, I would have 5x squared plus 5y squared. So that is technically a circle because they're both negative. To be a hyperbola, one has to be positive. So as you're checking those things, keep that in mind. So let's do a couple of examples. We're going to classify each conic, in other words, tell what it is. So I'm going to show you what I'm focusing on. On the first one, I just focus in on the x squared. I don't have a y squared anywhere, and so that means that this has to be a parabola since there's only one thing squared. With the next one, I look for my x squared and my y squared. And when I look at those, they have different numbers in front, but one's positive and one's negative, and that's the big factor here. Since they have different signs, it has to be a hyperbola. And then for our third one, again, I'm going to look at the x squared and the y squared. You don't really look at any of the other parts of that equation because they don't determine which type it is. Those are determined by the highest powers. So here I have 2x squared plus 4y squared. And so since it's plus, they're both positive. I know it's either a circle or an ellipse. And since one has a 2 and one has a 4, that makes it an ellipse. And then lastly, you have the 2x squared plus the 2x squared. They both have the same sign and they're both positive, but they both also have that same number, the 2, in front. And so that's what makes it a circle. Same number and same sign. And so that is how you classify conics, and that concludes this lesson.